Okay, we'll start. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Alex Radford. I'm an English solicitor and Spanish abogado with my lawyer in Spain. I'm joined by my colleagues Isabel and Patricia, also abogado colleagues. We act for clients buying, selling, and inheriting property all over Spain. Today, we're going to be talking about buying an off-plan property, and I'm really glad today that we're joined by Marc Pritchard and Paul and Alison. And I'm just going to pass it over to Marc to introduce himself. Marc, thank you for joining us and welcome.
Well, thank you for inviting. Thank you for the invitation. Just a brief moment. My name is Marc Pritchard. I'm the Sales and Marketing Director for Taylor Wimpey in Spain. I've been in this position for the last 23 years. I've been with the company here in Spain since 1994. We currently have 18 sites, 18 new developments on the go. That's on Mallorca, on Ibiza, on the Costa Blanca, and down on the Costa del Sol. We form part of Taylor Wimpey in the UK. We've been building here in Spain since 1958. That's when Taylor Woodrow started. It was Lord Taylor who came to Mallorca in 1958, fell in love with the island and decided to start building a couple of properties on the East Coast. And that's how the whole company and how it started, how we started here in Spain.
Fantastic. Paul, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Paul Payne, and I work for a company called Masa International. We specialise in new and resale properties on the Costa Blanca and the Costa Cálida, so southeast Spain. And I've been helping people to move to Spain or find a second home now. I think this is the 24th year. And I'm between the UK. I look after the UK side of the operation and helping clients this side, and also in Spain in our head office, which is situated just outside Torrevieja, where we have our main operation and our hotel there that accommodates clients who want to come over and view properties. So yeah, that's me.
Thanks for joining us, Paul. And Alison, from your lovely newly refurbished office, can you introduce yourself?
Alison de Cotta. I'm an independent Spanish mortgage broker, which means I don't work for any bank. I'm independent. I have agreements with all of the major banks here in Spain. Been in Spain for 20 odd years, always in finance. My background is international private banking. I worked for Credit Suisse, for Société Générale, for Banco Santander. And then I set up, specialised in Spanish mortgages and have been for the last 5 years, set up Mortgage Matters Spain 18 months ago.
Great, thank you for that. So basically, ladies and gentlemen, what we're doing today, we're recording the seminar and then we'll be placing it on our YouTube channels and circulating it. There's a chat box at the bottom of the screen, so if you've got any questions, please put them in there. We will definitely answer those if we don't run out of time. But we're going to be basically asking questions to Marc, Paul, and Alison, and also from the legal team at My Law in Spain. And hopefully all your questions about buying an off-plan property will be answered. And it's basically buying an off-plan, move-in, ready-to-go, key-in-hand property, as opposed to buying a plot of land and then instructing a builder and building your house yourself with the builder's help. We'll be talking about that next week. So basically, Spain has 17 different autonomous regions. It's an abundance of properties, second-hand, residential, and brand new off-plan properties. Taylor Wimpey build and sell properties all over Spain, and Masa, Paul from Masa, also acts as agents for selling those new properties, and also Paul acts as an agent for selling second-hand properties. So Paul and Marc, question to you now. How are you finding the market at the moment?
Paul, you make a start.
Okay. Well, yeah, funny times. We're massively up on inquiries, which may come as a surprise. I ran some numbers. We're just under 48% up on inquiries versus the same period for last year. So during this lockdown, there's been a significant. I'm apportioning some of it to perhaps the lockdown. There's been a surge in interest in people buying property in Spain, and more so actually coming to live in Spain as well. The balance of number of people buying a second home versus planning to come and live in Spain has swung in the favour of those seeking a full-time move. So whilst inquiries are up, we're handicapped by the fact that we can't actually get anyone to Spain at the moment to buy a property. But all going well, that changes as of next month, and we have a number of viewing trips, which are the trips that we organise to show people around. That starts from about I think our first is the 12th of July, and then we're fairly busy throughout the summer, and I'm very busy in September already.
Mark?
Yeah, it's similar, very similar to Masa. To give you a figure on the UK market, leads for our UK market have been up 109% in May this year compared to 2019. Again, is it because people just had more time to spend in front of the computers? Because we were actually spending less. Our marketing expenditure on the 15th of March, we decided to drop 50% of our marketing budget for this year. So we're basically, with half the budget, we've increased our leads by 109%. That's only for the UK market. Other markets actually performed similar, not quite as drastic as the UK, but even Germany, Benelux, Scandinavia, Eastern Europe, we've all been in a similar situation. It probably one reason probably is that people have just had more time to spend at home. We'll see over the next 3 to 6 months if they convert into visits, and then obviously converting from visits into sales. That's remained to be seen. Throughout the lockdown period from the 16th of March, Monday the 16th, until now, we have had sales. We have had sales to British clients. We have had sales to Spanish clients, more Spanish than anybody else. We've had cancellations too, but at the end we had more reservations than we had cancellations. But obviously it's far from what we expected. So it's two hands full, and but at least it's a lot better than what we anticipated on the 16th of March, 20th of March, when we actually put together new business plans. And we were very, very pessimistic. Because obviously we have to do reservation sales, and then obviously legal completions, handing properties over, and we didn't expect the market actually to resume until September this year. And what we can see now, the market is already resuming. We've had sales, reservations, even non-refundable deposits throughout the lockdown period. We have had legal completions, clients with power of attorney or lawyers with power of attorney acting on behalf of clients. And we're now actually, our call center is penciling in booked appointments for now, even from next week, because obviously Germans are already starting to travel again. Benelux too, UK will be slightly later, and Sweden too. But there is activity, more than what we expected, which is a good sign.
That is a good sign.
What's going to happen? I think we're still in that massive hurricane. We're coming out of the hurricane, and I think the results we won't be able to actually analyze and really see until I would say probably October, November, towards the end of this year, autumn, winter.
Okay, excellent. Thanks for that. Yeah, so good news. Your marketing department will be happy. Less money on marketing, and marketing's up. So when does that happen, eh? So Mark, what are the pros and cons of buying a brand new off-plan property?
Well, first of all, you've got guarantees. I mean, you buy something brand new, you've got similar to the UK, NHBC. Here in Spain, we've got a 10-year building guarantee on the structure. And then further apart from that, we've got 2 years on everything when you move in. That's from Taylor Wimpey, so that's nice. It's a new design. It's modern. You've got somebody you can talk to if you need something to be sorted out. There's an after-sales department. Energy efficiency is becoming a big issue, I think, in the future. Obviously, at the moment, we've got other things we're talking about, but I think the climate issue is going to come back in again. I think energy efficient properties are something of the future. I do think that older properties will probably penalized on maybe taxation in the future. I think that will happen. Everything we're building at the moment is B. The scale goes from A to G. Anything we built 10 or 11 years ago, 12 years ago, even our resale properties or the older properties Taylor Wimpey built in the 90s, in the 80s, 90s, and the 2000s were all, they were G, most of them, because energy efficiency was not something we really talked about. But it's becoming a major issue. So I think that's another thing which is becoming bigger and bigger. New property, you can actually participate. You can change floors, you can change tilings. If you go in early enough, you can change kitchens. Depending on which price bracket, how large the property is, where it's located, if it's detached villa, which we have to, you can actually personalize even more. But even on a standard property, here we've got 2 or 3 different tiles you can choose from, wall colors you can choose from, kitchens you can choose from. So we're quite flexible. So you can have a bespoke property, literally.
Same question to you. What are the pros and cons of a new build if you compare to a second hand?
I mean, I'd concur with everything Marc said. One of the other big points of buying a new property or an off-plan property is having the possibility to choose the plot. If you want, if you get it early enough in the construction, you can choose that maybe you want sun in the morning, sun in the evening. So a lot more flexibility in terms of position, and that's probably one of the big ones. The fact that yes, the house is modern and people like it, that it's new, it's theirs. It's quite often the pinnacle of a lifelong dream, and it belongs completely to them and has never been used before. So these factors as well. There can be a financial advantage as well. Usually, the earlier on you buy a property in a development, the prices tend to start out at the lowest point when the project is first launched, and that's, if you like, a bit of a compensation for the fact that you've got to wait a little while until the house is delivered. And usually, by the time the last house is sold, the prices can often be a fair bit higher than they were when they first launched. Now there are market forces that can determine that as well. So I'm making a broad generalisation, but that sometimes is a factor. Although I would say that very few of my customers are really, they're not necessarily buying to buy and sell very quickly. They're buying because they want to have a home in Spain or to live in Spain.
Sorry, I have a question to Marc.
Yeah.
Marc, generally speaking, from the first person putting a deposit down to handing the keys over, how long does the whole building process take?
It depends really region for region. Okay, so obviously we operate on the Balearic Islands, we operate in the Costa del Sol, and we operate in the Costa Blanca. We tend to see that the Costa Blanca is the quickest and the Balearic Islands is the slowest. Why is that? Because in each and every region, obviously, as Alex quite rightly said right at the beginning, we've got 17 autonomous governments here in Spain, and every town hall is independent. Every town hall has got its own building regulations. That's how bad it is. So we've got town halls where we can actually get a building license between up to 3-4 months. That's actually Torrevieja or Orihuelas. Torrevieja is quite good. They're quite quick. Now in Mallorca, down the Costa del Sol, we've got town halls which take up to 12 months to gain the building license. That's point one. Then building, on the Costa Blanca, the Costa del Sol, most of the town halls, we don't have any restrictions, time restrictions. For instance, if you go into town halls which are near the sea, tourists, you've got hotels, what can happen, they'll stop the building in June, July, August, and September, or July and August. In Mallorca, we've got town halls which stop us building from the 1st of May until the 15th of October. So we can't build, we can't do any structural work. So, and then again, if you get the final building certificates, again, town hall to town hall, everything is different. If a client puts his money down and there's a site which is going to start, we say the building period is normally around about 12 months, 12 to 15 months. Then we've got other regions where on Mallorca, we straight away say 18 months, 18 to 22 months. We do not start selling until we've got the building license in place, which is quite different to many of our competitors. So ultimately, when we start selling, normally what we say is you will have your property, if it's on day one, new release, there's no earth movement, nothing at all. In Alicante, we normally say it's about 18 months until you can move into your new property. On the Costa del Sol, it's slightly longer, 2022. On Mallorca, we say normally 2 to 2.5 years. So every area is different, every region is different, and every town hall is different.
Okay, thanks. I have a couple of questions for Paul. Firstly, you were mentioning about the advantage that you can choose the location if you buy off plan, and I would like to ask whether why it's important that you choose your location first and then look for the perfect property rather than the other way around, because many people would do it the other way perhaps. And the other question is, what percentage of your buyers buy an off-plan property? If you can give us some figures.
Sure. Well, I'll answer your second question first. Since I ran the numbers from 1st of January 2018 to date, and it's pretty much 50% of our properties that we sell are off plan, and 20% of the properties we sell are new properties but key in hand. So they are new properties that you don't have to wait for, they're already completed, so you can normally move in 4 to 6 weeks. And 30% of our sales are resale properties. So we certainly sell a lot more new than we do resale, and that's a trend that the gap between or the proportion between new and resale sales has just got bigger and bigger and bigger over the last 5-6 years. As more properties and availability comes on the market, value, a lot of the builders, particularly on the Costa Blanca, have owned land for such a long time that they can afford to build a really high quality product at a very affordable and interesting price for the market. Your first question though, so why should we find the location first before the property, or concentrate on the location first? It's really just about efficiency of getting from an interest in having a home in Spain to moving in. You know, Spain's a very, very big country. The analogy I like to use is probably familiar with the game Guess Who, where you have to kind of work your way through a series of questions until you find the face that you're looking for. Well, it's really like Guess Where, if you like. So through a series of questions, you know, does the property need to be walking distance to a beach? Will you be driving when you're in Spain? How important is it to have a school near you? All of these questions help us to whittle down the huge country that is Spain, or even on the Costa Blanca alone, to finding locations that could technically work. So they would work on paper based on the criteria of the customer. Now, budget of the customer has to be one of the early questions, because that also determines which areas we can look in. So once we have a good understanding of the brief and what's important to the client and what price range they're looking in, we can then suggest the areas in which to focus your search, because we know broadly in most areas you can get most types of property. So it's just a question of money and what it is that you're looking for. But that's certainly a more efficient way of doing it, rather than working from a list of properties off of a website where broadly an apartment looks like an apartment and a villa looks like a villa, and some are shinier and bigger than others, but they're essentially similar. So definitely be area-led rather than property-led.
I have a question for you. How much can buyers borrow for a new brand property?
Thanks, Patricia. Yeah, I was just going to say, I think the first thing to explain when you're buying a property off plan from the developer, in other words, a property that you're waiting to be built, you're going to be making stage payments as the construction advances. And then once it's finished, there's usually between 60 and 70% left to pay once the construction is complete and the licenses are in place. So the banks won't help you to finance the stage payments. That you have to finance yourself from savings. But you can, of course, mortgage what is left at the end of construction. And the conditions for off-plan finance are the same as the conditions that you would get for a resale property. So in other words, maximum 70% for non-residents. Some of the banks are limiting that now to 60% to the Brits because of Brexit. There's the B word again. Although there are still banks who will do up to 70% for the British who have got a strong financial profile. And then they'll be able to do 80% for resident clients. Another important thing to point out with off-plan, although you may have reserved an off-plan right at the beginning and you've maybe got 2 years before it's going to be built, and you're making your stage payments as you go along, it's still a good idea to obtain an agreement in principle for a mortgage at this early stage. Because then you know that as long as your circumstances don't change, you've got the peace of mind that you are feasible to get the mortgage when the building is complete. So yeah, it's worth starting the ball rolling initially, get an agreement in principle, and then you've got the peace of mind to get the mortgage at the end of the day.
Okay, thanks for that, Alison. So basically up to 70%, and always important to try and furnish you with as much documentation as possible so that people, before they come out to Spain or start viewing properties and putting offers in, know how much they can borrow. But yeah, 70% is quite good. And what kind of interest rates are you talking about at the moment for a non-resident?
Yeah, so for non-residents, you can go for fixed rate. Now, fixed rates are fixed for the full term of the mortgage. So if you're going for a 20-year mortgage, you'd be fixed for the full term. So indication 2.5, 2.6 fixed for the 20 years, which is not bad if you want to know exactly what your repayments are going to be over the full term. And then on a variable rate, you'd be looking at between 1.6 and 2% on a variable rate. Okay.
And Alison, if people want to contact you just to have an initial discussion about how much they can borrow, do you charge for that, or
no,
how do you operate?
No, there's no, the general advice, the initial general advice is free. So I usually have several phone calls with the client. I take a fact find from them. I'll do a full report and I'll give them an indication of the level of finance that we can do. I'll send them a list of documents, and it's only once they're ready to go ahead and actually apply for the mortgage that I'll inform them what the fee is. But the initial advice is all free.
Okay, excellent. So listen, we've had a good question in the chat, and it is: do you think Brexit will create obstacles to property purchases post 31st of December? Well, I can answer that. Basically, we have the clients from all over the world buying property in Spain, and they pay the same taxes, they go through the same legal process. So in effect, a British person will be able to buy a property this year, next year, and the year afterwards. And the process and the costs involved will be exactly the same. Okay. What may change slightly is that when if you own a property and you spend less than you don't become a Spanish tax resident, so you don't pay more than 6 months a year in Spain, then you pay in Spain what's known as the non-residence income tax, and you pay that the year after you purchase the property. And that's basically a percentage of the value of the property. But we're talking hundreds of euros rather than thousands of euros. The applicable rate at the moment, for example, if you rented a property out and you pay tax on that in Spain, for Europeans is 19%, but for non-Europeans it's 24%. So there might be a slight increase in tax that you would have to pay if you rented the property out. But generally speaking, just so you're aware, the buying cost, the process will remain absolutely the same. Okay. Another question we've had is, if someone is able to pay cash, so I imagine we've got a cash buyer for a property purchase, what issues does that arise for the purchaser? Isabel, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, well, I understand if someone is a cash buyer, understanding that the funds are in place, then, well, it would imply that the purchase will be straightforward, and if you compare to obtaining a mortgage in Spain, it will take less time, because normally with a mortgage it can take a little longer. That's if we understand of being cash buyer as that we have the funds, and so that we're going to transfer the funds from the UK or from somewhere else to the Spanish bank account and then arrange payments in Spain. If we are referring to the fact that the payment is in cash, for example, just to mention that the usual way to pay, the normal payment way would be by bank check or bank transfer. So that's a commonly way to pay for completion purposes. Just to mention that, well, taking cash from another country or moving from one region to the other with cash could have some difficulty, as there is some limitation in the amount of the maximum amount of cash that someone can carry out and that someone can deposit at the bank, for example. And there is also something to take into account, which is the money laundering prevention protocols, which are very strict and very restrictive, especially when you are buying off plan, because when you are buying a resale property, there is not such a strict protocol perhaps, but it's true that when buying from the developer and builder, there is need to declare and to clearly confirm the origin of the funds that you're using to pay the purchase price, no? So, well, that's what I can comment to this question. I hope it's a bit more clear. It has clarified.
Thanks, Isabel. I mean, I would just add to that. The fact that you've got cash and you've got money available in the bank to crack on and deal with the purchase means that if you get all your ducks in a row, so you put in place a power of attorney, NIEs, which is the Spanish tax numbers we will need, and we open a bank account for you, and you're ready to go, and then you find a property, it's going to make the completion process much quicker. And lots of sellers are interested in that. So it's all about preparation, as well as the research. So yeah, so basically, you know, you can, when you submit the offer, you can say to the seller, look, and we'd always say when you're touring with the agents, ask for looking at a resale property, ask the agent how long the property's been on the market for, if the seller has accepted or rejected any offers, and if so, how much and why are they selling. So basically, try and find out more about the seller's details, and then submit what we call a cheeky offer. And because you've got cash, you can say, look, I'm ready to complete fairly quickly. And a lot of foreign buyers are surprised that we can actually complete a purchase in Spain relatively quickly compared to other countries. So a completion could take place in a matter of 3 to 4 weeks to up to 12 weeks if a mortgage is involved. Okay, so we've got another question come in, and I'm going to throw this one at Paul and Mark. Paul to answer first. Paul, do you expect prices to drop because of the COVID situation?
Wow, that's a tricky one. Well, on the basis of the level of inquiries that are coming in, should they convert anywhere near inquiries to sales, and this is only, we're one company on the Costa Blanca, would suggest there really shouldn't be much of an adjustment, if at all. It's a very different situation if we were to look at from, say, 2008, where there was a huge oversupply of new properties on the market. That's not something that exists now. There's probably no other industry in the world that's better prepared for a downturn than the Spanish property market, because it's happened before. Or I shouldn't say a downturn, an obstacle such as we're experiencing now. So a lot of the builders now, Taylor Wimpey, one of the exceptions, you build apartments and all different sorts of properties there. But a lot of builders these days only want to build villas. They build one property, sell it, build another one, sell it. So there's not a huge oversupply on the new side of properties. And then based on the level of inquiries and talking to other people in the industry, everybody seems to have plenty of interest. So it's just a question whether that interest converts into sales. And if it does, then there'll be no correction in prices, and in fact due to the fact that there's a huge incentive particularly for the UK market, to come and buy their property and get in before we leave the transition period of the EU, in order to make their residency a lot more straightforward. That could have an impact on prices, and in fact even drive them up. So my very best guess, and that's all it is I think in the early stages of people coming back to Spain, you know, as of sort of next month, August, maybe September, I think there'll be deals to be had, because I think there will be builders and there will be individuals who will want money in the till, and there may be some deals to be had. Anything longer than that, I'm quite sceptical that there'll be any adjustment at all.
Mark?
Unfortunately, I haven't got that crystal ball. I can tell from. I wish I would, because we've gone through a couple of crises, and Paul has gone through them too. I've gone through them. Alex, you've gone through them. There was one 92, 93. Then we had one in the 98, 99. Then the big one 27, 28, 26, 27, 28. This one is it's a new one. It's a new beast. It's worldwide, so at the moment we don't know what's happening. What I can see on the ground, because obviously as a property developer, the first thing you look at is what the land prices are doing. So obviously we were negotiating, looking at land before COVID-19, and we're still looking at land. Without land, I can't continue my business. Land prices are not moving at all so far. So they're pretty stable, not in the Costa del Sol, not the Costa Blanca, and even less on the islands, because on Mallorca and Ibiza and Minorca we have the situation there's hardly any land left. That's point one. The builders are not dropping prices yet, so we have new sites which are going to start. We are looking to start brand new sites in September. We've kept on building throughout COVID-19. There were only 2 weeks where we had a complete lockdown, which were the 2 weeks before Easter, when we couldn't do anything. But we've been working since Easter. The week after, we kept on building on all the sites. The market, what Paul already said, I agree with Paul that the demand seems to be there. But yeah, it remains to be seen if these convert into visits and sales. The market will dictate the prices. I mean, that's at the end of the day, it's the case. And then each region is a different animal again. I mean, the Costa Blanca, Torrevieja area, I think will keep on. You haven't got the oversupply. There's hardly any sort of oversupply in the Costa Blanca. There might be some oversupply on the Costa del Sol. We had that before. I don't know if it's going to be, because there are quite a few sites in the Costa del Sol which I don't think will start. So I think that oversupply situation will regulate itself, and we certainly haven't got an oversupply on the islands. But again, I think the market will tell us if we have to do anything or if we don't have to do anything. At the moment, looking at the broader picture, and that's just coming out of COVID-19, at the moment, there doesn't seem to be a movement. And we are doing sales, and we're doing these sales, even non-refundable deposits, without big incentives. You're throwing in something. I mean, at the end of the day, we're not in that buoyant market where we soon I forget it. There's another client waiting. You're playing around with electric appliances or maybe with light fittings, things like that. I think that's a standard. We've always been doing that. But we don't have to give 10 or 15 or 20% discounts, not at all. I think addition on top of that, I mean, there is a lot of money in the system. I mean, all the money which is being pumped into the system at the moment, there's money being printed like crazy. It's got to come out somewhere. It's quite nice if it comes out in Spain in the property market, on Costa Blanca, the Costa del Sol. But it remains to be seen what's going to happen with all that money. And I think there's a lot of people who've got cash in their bank account, and the banks, I mean, if you look at the interest rates nowadays, better don't leave your money in the bank, because it loses money each and every day you leave it in there. So rather come to Spain and invest in a nice lifestyle. And I was just, when we started this just before, we had a meeting, the 7 of us together, and I think the lockdown here in Spain was actually quite, well, Mallorca, where I live, is I had a pretty good lockdown, actually. It wasn't too bad at all.
Exactly. No, thanks for that, Mark. So, I mean, to a certain extent, it's too early to tell
Yeah.
on what will happen, but each sale depends much on the seller's circumstances. So again, I think you've just got to ask them those questions we commented on before. If you have a look on our website, on our YouTube channel, we interviewed a surveyor and valuer 3-4 weeks ago, Survey Spain, and if you watch that video, that will give you some more insight about when the property is advertised for sale and the actual price that it gets back is when the offer is actually accepted, there's a differential of about 10-11%. So, Paul, would you kind of, if you're acting for a buyer, would you say that basically buyers and sellers normally meet somewhere 10 or 11% below the asking price as a general figure or percentage?
Okay, this depends on the property. As far as new properties are concerned, it's been a long time since I've seen any builder really move much on price. As Mark said, there's usually a deal to be had on getting something included, and some builders are proactive with that, and they will come out with an offer and say, okay, at the moment we're going to include your air conditioning and your appliances and such. Or sometimes that's left as a point of negotiation. So when we're working with clients, we're very aware of what offers are around, and we work with our clients on that basis. Resale properties, wow. We have properties where very little comes off, and some where a lot comes off. It depends on how motivated the buyer is. It also matters on things like currency exchange as well. As the pound weakens, the euro price can come down if it's a British seller, and the reverse of that as the pound strengthens up. But yeah, I would say 10% is very top end, I would suggest, but that might be also how we work. We as a company, we don't tend to work, and we work a bit different on the Costa Blanca. On the Costa del Sol, there's like one big pot of properties and agents work from it. On the Costa Blanca, we actually go out and list our own properties, and we will tell our vendors really what they can expect to get for the property. Don't bother listing it for, if you're prepared to sell it for 130, don't list it for 170, because you're just going to stop footfall into your house for viewings. So there's always something built into the price for negotiation. So it is a bit of a dance that happens, but I would say 10% would be very, very top end.
Okay, thanks for that. So buyers and sellers dancing away to reach an agreement. So Isabel, Mark mentioned earlier that Taylor Wimpey only start promoting their developments when they've got planning permission. But we have seen other developers start to promote developments without planning permission and actually taking deposits. What are the risks involved in buying a property like that?
Well, obviously the risk is that you paid a deposit and then nothing happens. The planning permissions are not granted because the project does not comply with the requirements, and maybe in the meantime the developer may postpone the refund of any deposit, or may not be too proactive, and so the potential buyer will be waiting there without seeing the deposit, without seeing anything happening, and that can take long. In the meantime, if the developer has not set up any bank guarantee, and if this developer who is starting the construction without, or who is starting selling without permission, may be the kind of developer that may not be in a well financial situation, or because there is a crisis, or because there is a problem, this developer goes bankrupt, then it's difficult that this potential buyer will get the money back. So this is why, well, it's strongly advisable that a potential buyer considers the necessity or the advice to ensure that the building permission is there, so that the project is has some is realistic that this project is going to happen. In some regions, like in Andalusia, for example, because of the Consumers Protection Law, it is necessary to provide with the information about the project, about the planning permissions, if they are in place, if they are not in place. So nowadays, this is more controlled. In the past, perhaps there were more problems in relation to this situation, but I think that well, nowadays this is under more control even from the authorities.
Okay, thanks, Isabel. Just so you're aware, I mean, we're acting for some clients at the moment about buying plots of land and building with a developer. So it's basically brand new off plan, and they haven't got planning permission yet, but the builder's already started and has advanced that considerably. They haven't got any bank guarantees in place because they haven't got the planning permission. So what we have done there is we've deposited those monies with the notary, so it's protected. So whatever you do, whatever payment is made, it's very important that's protected by in the form of a bank guarantee or by depositing those monies with a notary. Okay, so Patricia, compared to a resale property, what are the extra costs involved in buying an off-plan property?
Well, basically the difference is if you buy a resale property or second-hand property, you pay transfer tax, which varies in all regions of Spain, but talking generally, it's an 8% in Andalusia. If the property value is less than 400,000 euros. Same in Murcia, and in Valencia area, Alicante, etc., it's a 10% transfer tax. But if you're buying a new brand property, you pay VAT at the current rate of 10% on top of the purchase price. And also there is a tax payable, actos jurídicos documentados, which is stamp duty of 1.5% of the purchase price. So that's, in regard of cost, that's the main difference. You pay notary fees and you pay land registry fees, same as if a resale property.
Thanks for that, Patricia. So just bear in mind, you buy a resale property in Andalusia or Murcia, transfer tax is 8%, Costa Blanca, Valencian region 10%, and then the difference, if you buy a brand new property, say in Andalusia, Costa del Sol, you're talking 3.5% because you pay 10% VAT, IVA, and then 1.5%. Thank you, Patricia. So someone's asked us whether there be any restrictions on how long you can stay in Spain after Brexit. Well, basically, there's no agreement reached yet between the EU and the UK. But if the UK's citizens are treated as other non-European citizens, then British people will be able to. British people who haven't applied for and obtained residency this year, and there's still time to do that. Those arriving next year would be able to spend 90 days in a 180-day period. That's 90 days in a 180-day period, unless there's an agreement between the EU and the UK covering that. I'm just going to ask this. I'm going to ask Paul this question that's been asked. Presumably, Masa International or Taylor Wimpey can take care of all the paperwork for the purchaser without needing to hire lawyers or surveyors, etc. What would you recommend there to the purchaser, Paul?
To be honest, we wouldn't work with a client who wasn't instructing a lawyer. It has to be a lawyer, has to be independent of the seller. And that's as much because if a client is trying to work without a lawyer, they're trying to cut corners on money. And at the very least, it means we'll end up having to do that work for free or for little money. But it's absolutely important that you can't even think about buying a property in Spain without instructing a good lawyer that speaks your language, that can provide all documentation in your own language. That would ensure that you have a safe buying experience, that will make sure all documents are collected and checked out with regards to a property. So yeah, that one, I would close the door on that very quickly.
No, so we obviously agree with that. We'd recommend you instruct an independent lawyer to act for you, someone who's acting for you. As part of your research, I'd suggest that you contact that lawyer, talk to them about their costs, talk to them about the overall cost of the purchase, depending on the region where you're going to buy in, what services they will provide. So, for example, here at Minor in Spain, we provide the full package on the purchase. You normally would sign a power of attorney in the UK. That comes to us. With that, we can open a bank account for you. We can apply for a mortgage, apply for your NIE number, the Spanish tax number, and we can complete the purchase, obtain quotes for home and contents insurance, and of course complete and register the property in your name. So it's the whole package. And it's very important, as Paul said, instructing an independent lawyer who's going to act for you, because if there are any issues, and just because it's Taylor Wimpey or Masa doesn't mean that their contracts aren't perfect, and that doesn't mean that we won't negotiate some points. Those contracts have been carefully prepared by them, but there's some points that we might disagree with or negotiate with, and we've had that situation with both companies. So just bear in mind, an independent lawyer acting for you is of utmost importance. I'll pass over to Isabel. So Isabel, clients buying a purchase contract from Taylor Wimpey, what are the key questions that we're going to be looking for in that contract?
Yeah, well, apart from the typical details that we will have in any purchase contract, like the parties being identified, the description of the property, there will be reference to the project, the location, there will be a description of the surface, there would be sometimes an approximate surface if, well, they are in this earliest stage, but they have to include this. The land registry details and the cadastral details for the land will be inserted. If there is any charge or a mortgage, that will be also reflected. Perhaps if the developer has a mortgage already, that will need to be stated as well. In terms of the price, it will be described and detailed, including the VAT payment. And it is very important, and this is very specific for the contract with the developers, to include the bank account where all the deposits will be paid, which will be a special account only for the deposits, and the reference to the bank guarantee, which will be provided, that we were referring to earlier, ideally to be provided by a reputable Spanish bank or Spanish company. And very important to remind that it is necessary to have the original one, the original bank guarantee with you, in order to execute it if necessary in the future. In terms of the bank guarantee, just to mention that you execute it directly with the bank. So if the developer has a problem, financial problem, whatever, you just need to address to the bank to get the money back plus any interest. Apart from those terms, there will be the completion deadline. Normally there is going to be some automatic extension, 3 months or 6 months, based on the fact that the town hall may take longer to issue the first occupation license, which is very common that happens. So that it is expected in the contract. There will be also, reference to the consequences of the breach of the contract, in case either the vendor or the buyer would not comply with the terms, with the payments. The contract will also state the payment of the costs arising from the completion. Normally the buyer will assume the stamp duty, the notary, the land registry fee, and the builder will always pay the plusvalia local tax. This tax in the past, sometimes some builders, developers would impose this cost to the buyers, but it was stated that because of consumers protection law, that should be always be paid by the developers, this plusvalia. Finally, in the contract, we will also find the clause related to the money laundering prevention protocol and the data protection protocol, which is usually a very, very long clause. The data protection clause is normally even longer than others. And finally, to the contract, we will find the attachments that are usually established by the consumer protection law, and typically included, like the land registry informative note, the nota simple, the cadastral information, as well as drawings and maps to locate the property within the complex, and the memoria de calidades, which is the list of the material and specifications, including quality standards of fixtures and fittings. That would be usually the kind of contract that we would find.
I have a couple of questions to Marc. So Marc, prior to completion and during the lockdown, how are you, or how have you been organizing the buyer's inspection for the snagging list? And also, if you can tell me what's the protocol to repair damage that has been arising in the snag list?
Well, I can give you an idea what we did just a couple of weeks ago when we started legally. We did legal completions throughout the lockdown periods, but we didn't do the final inspections of the property. So that will be done when the client comes here. and he would go in there and do the snagging, obviously with the masks on, social distancing, 2 meters here in Spain. We've done one last week, no, 2 weeks ago, and actually what we did, first we let the client go in and he do the snagging, and then he's got a list which he can just tick off, and he brought it back out, and then our after sales manager actually went through it afterwards. But the snagging of the property, because at some stage we weren't allowed to go into the property actually with the owner. That wasn't allowed. That's now allowed again in phase 2, phase 3, where we are now in Spain. We can actually physically go in with the client again into the property, which wasn't allowed before. So we've obviously the legal completions we've done, most of the legal completions were actually done with power of attorney of the lawyer. So the lawyer actually just made sure that all the paperwork is there and the property is finished, but the lawyer didn't snag the property. The client is going to do that. So we're going to do that. We've done the first ones, it's 2.5, 3 weeks ago now, and that was on the Costa Blanca. And that actually worked quite well. Obviously, they will have, but in our case, it's we give 2 years guarantee on all moving parts anyway. So if anything does come up, at the moment, we're quite open. So anything which is there, we will sort out. We won't start discussing about a scratch here or a scratch there. So it is pretty straightforward, and we're not looking when the whole situation is complicated as it is, or complicated enough as it is. So you don't want to make it even more complicated, more difficult. So keep it easy, just keep it simple. Money laundering. We comply fully. So it starts off filling in all the documentation, which is 2 pages, the minute the client reserves the property. So he has to fill out another piece of paper where he declares that all his money and the funding he's making, it's all money which he's earned. It's a lot easier with clients from the European Union. It starts getting difficult if they're clients from Eastern Europe or the Middle East, or tax havens like places like Jersey, Guernsey, Dubai, Qatar, Saudi Arabia. We've quite a few of those on the Costa del Sol, and that's when it really starts getting complicated. With the European Union and the British markets, it's pretty straightforward, but they do have to fill in all the papers before. Just basically what they do, they put in their names, their details, job, where they work, what they do, how they earn their money, and we have to comply with all these paperwork by the Banco de España. And in our case, we have to put a protocol, a meeting together, and we have to minute this meeting every 3 months, and it has to be signed by the president and the secretary. I'm actually the secretary, so I know quite what I'm talking about. And it's a lot of documentation. So money laundering nowadays is something which is really being by the Banco de España. I know that the money laundering laws here in Spain, for instance, are a lot stricter. When I speak to my German colleague, for instance, in Germany, if you buy a property, you don't have to do it. Nobody does it. So Spain is a lot stricter in terms of money laundering than probably most of the other European countries.
And Paul, what about the money laundering criteria that you have in place? I guess it's similar.
Yeah.
Yes. The buyers and sellers have to be identified. Payments going through clients' accounts, so we need all of the documentation for that to show the origin of the money, because that will we then hand that over to the client's lawyer, who I understand you take that along to the notary. So everything has to have a paper trail. There are no physical cash is taken at all at any point. So it's very, very strict now. Hasn't necessarily always been that way around the world, but Spain is super strict on that. I think much the same as the UK now.
Yeah.
Maybe we have a darker past, no?
Yeah.
I have a question for Alison. As many developers take a mortgage to build the properties, can you tell for a client who is going to buy the advantages or disadvantages of taking over the developer's mortgage loan, and if that's possible?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for the question. Yeah, I mean, when you purchase a property from a developer in Spain, it's quite common for you to be offered the option to subrogate, which is the Spanish verb, I think, or take over the developer's mortgage, the one that they've already taken out with the bank to finance the construction of the properties. Important to point out that if you do decide to accept the developer's mortgage, the banks will still require your full documentation, your full financial profile, your full personal profile. It's not a question of, oh, I'll just take over this. No, they will still go through all the checks, make sure your financial circumstances are add up, and so you will still need a formal approval if you do decide to take over the developer's mortgage. One of the advantages, the bank may not insist on you doing a valuation on the property, because obviously it's a development that they already know and they're familiar with, so they've already been through all of that with the developer, so that you could save some time on that. I mean, I think things have changed a lot. In the past, the main advantage of taking over the developer's mortgage was that the client would not have to pay what's called AJD. You mentioned it earlier, AJD on the mortgage, which is the equivalent of stamp duty, but on the mortgage in Spain. That's all changed since last year, when the new mortgage law came out, and they ruled that now it is the banks that will have to pay this AJD tax. So now there is not such an advantage to clients to take over, it's not going to be cheaper for them, they're not going to save tax because they're not going to be paying it anyway if they take out a mortgage with another bank. So in a way, you've got the advantage now for the client is that you can actually go out into the market. We can go out into the market for the clients and get the best deal that's on the table for them. You know, we could even sort of hold the developer's mortgage in our hands and say, look, this is what we could take over. What can you do better? So we're in a strong position to negotiate a better deal, because there's no real advantage certainly not as far as the tax is concerned anymore.
Thanks for that, Alison. So basically, we've acted for you, you've instructed us, we've put in place the power of attorney, we've got your NIs, we've opened the bank accounts, you've signed the contract for your new off-plan property, you've chosen all the extras, the different tiles, the floors, the kitchens, and you're ready to complete. You send over the money, we complete, and congratulations, it's your property then. And at completion though, Isabel, what insurances do the clients receive?
Yeah, very importantly, well, there is the 10-year insurance, which Marc mentioned earlier. This is a seguro decenal. It's a building guarantee covering serious structural faults that may affect the construction elements, such as the foundation or retaining walls. And it is imposed by the Consumer Protection Law and has no extra cost for the buyer because the developer will pay for that. The guarantee is basically an insurance policy with an insurance company, so it's not with the developer or the builder. Apart from this, there is a 3-year insurance to cover less serious structural faults that could imply that the property is non-habitable. So for example, leaking roofs. And then finally, 1-year insurance to cover minor problems with the fixtures and finishings, such as cracks in the plaster or badly fitted windows. Those are the 3 insurance that they would have in Spain.
And I think we've got time for just one final question.
Yes, I would like to ask to Alison, well, whether it's necessary to wait until the property is fully built and the first occupation license is in place to start the process of applying for the mortgage loan, or it would be possible to do it earlier?
No, you can start the process for applying for the mortgage as early on as when you know, there's nothing on the ground, you've just seen the plans and you put down a reservation. At that point, then we can do an agreement in principle for you so that you know you've got the peace of mind that when it does complete in a couple of years' time, that you will have your finance available. Obviously, you can't draw down on the mortgage once it's approved until everything's complete and all of the licenses are in place, and the bank then goes in and does the valuation on the property. But no, recommendation is to certainly get an approval in principle as soon as possible so that you do have that peace of mind as the building goes on, that you know as long as your circumstances don't change, you're going to get that finance at the end of the day.
Okay, thanks for that. So basically, that brings an end to this seminar about buying off-plan property. I hope we've answered all your questions about buying off-plan property. We'd also recommend that once you've completed, or before, or shortly after, that you sign a Spanish will. You have a Spanish will for your Spanish assets, and maybe a UK will or another will for other assets that you may have, and that they both work together. And again, if you look at our YouTube channel, last week we were talking about wills, and there's a lot of information about that on that channel. So just two final questions that we're just going to answer. Mark, you might know about this. I mean, we know the area well, Corvera. Do you know if the prices have increased or changed much since the new airport has opened?
I honestly, Corvera, we've got nothing. I've got Torrevieja, but I think it's pretty stable around there. Maybe increased slightly. Corvera, which is basically it's all the area around where Polaris used to be in the 2008, 2009. I think Paul's probably got better information because they're better positioned in that area than we are, far better. But I think the market probably has slightly improved, because I know that a lot of the bank repossessed property, the bank Polaris stuff, a lot of it has sold. So, but I don't know what the actual. So, Paul, maybe you will know more than I do.
It's increased a bit of the building activity in that catchment area. Some of the golf course developments in that region, they're now actually starting to build new properties there again, and quite economical too. You know, you've got apartments starting from around £46,000 on some of these golf courses down there. The airport's great for that area, but if you are in the immediate vicinity of Corvera on these golf courses there, you've got to really want to play golf, because sometimes you have to travel a bit of a way to get to some of the major towns, and that's why the prices are keen there. So it will certainly benefit that side, but there just hasn't been the volume of flights into there as yet to really make much of an impact on the market. Although, as I say, some builders have got in early and have started to build properties in that area.
Okay, thanks for that. So we had another kind of Brexit question. We will be holding a Zoom seminar about Brexit, so watch out for that on our YouTube channel and social media. But basically, as far as we're aware at the moment, next year, British people, unless there is an agreement to the contrary, will be able to spend 90 days in a 180-day period, not 120 days, 90 days in a 180-day period. Next week, we're going to be talking about buying a plot of land and building it yourself. So quite different to what we've talked about today, key in hand. And from the Masa in Spain team, I'd like to thank Paul, Alison, Ali, and Mark for joining us today, and all of you. I hope you found it interesting. Please, join us next week, and do visit the Masa in Spain YouTube channel to watch previous videos that we've recorded. Stay safe, and we look forward to seeing you all in Spain soon. Thank you.